I'm a cop, and there's a pack of donkeys going around slaughtering people. It's up to me and my own donkey to stop them. Tensions were sky high, and the only thing keeping Officer Williams from falling apart entirely was the shot of whiskey I'd sent him behind the bar to fetch. He was rattled, visibly shaken, and frankly, who could blame him? 17 people dead, killed in ways so brutal they hardly seemed real. One woman's skull had been crushed until her head popped like a grape. One of her eyes had burst from the socket and rolled just far enough to end up facing the other one. It was like they were staring at each other in stunned disbelief. Williams froze behind the bar, staring down. Then he bent forward and vomited again. 18. Make that 18 dead. Another one? I asked. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and gave a pale nod. You think this was some kind of gang hit, Captain? I scanned the scene once more. Tables were smashed to pieces, blood sprayed across walls, floors, windows, everywhere. Whoever did this wasn't trying to hide it. It felt deliberate, like a statement. But a statement to who? And why here, of all places? Just a working class dive, folks having drinks on a Wednesday. I don't know, Williams, I said. Just pour that drink already. I looked down. A severed hand was stretched out near my boots, frozen mid-reach. And pour one for me while you're at it. A voice cut through the tension. One of the forensics guys from the city. Captain? Yeah? I said. We might have a survivor. I rushed over, boots splashing through pooled blood. On the floor lay a man whose legs were twisted at impossible angles. His head twitched faintly. He was groaning. Tell dispatch we need that ambulance back now, I shouted. Then I dropped to a knee beside the guy. Sir, help is on the way. Can you tell me who did this? His mouth opened, but all that came out was a low gurgle. He tried again. Don, he said. Don, I repeated. What do you mean? Don who? Mafia, some mob boss? Couldn't be. He coughed, struggling. Don Keyes. He died before the medics got there. The lab tech, Dennis, I remembered now, looked stunned. Did he just say donkeys? He was delirious, I said. But I was frowning, not because I didn't believe it, but because I just noticed something odd, a few pieces of what looked like hay poking out from under a flipped chair. Well, if that's true, that's a hell of a twist, Dennis muttered. But I guess it's as good a theory as any, right, Captain? Maybe, I murmured, crouching to get a better look. Yep, definitely hay. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. Let's keep moving. I made my way back to the bar, where Williams was knocking back another pour. This is going to sound strange, I told him, but I need you to check out the Walsh place over on Hinton Road. You know the one? He nodded. Color was starting to return to his cheeks. What am I looking for? Word is they've got a decent number of donkeys out there. Yeah, I think so, he said cautiously. I want you to check if any of them got loose. He blinked. The donkeys? The donkeys. Sir, respectfully, are you messing with me right now? I opened my notebook, still missing a few body parts. One guy's foot, another one's jaw, found a hand just now. So you tell me, want to dig through more of this mess? Or check on the donkeys? He threw back the last of his drink like it was medicine. Donkeys it is, sir. An hour passed before I finally peeled myself away from the scene and made the drive home. I needed a long, scalding shower and about 10 more years of therapy. But before I went inside, I made a stop out back to visit Mabel. She was all I had left. Melissa, my late wife, grew up on a farm out in Nebraska. She had a soft spot for donkeys, always had. 15 years ago, when her father passed, we inherited the place. It wasn't part of our long-term plan, so we sold it off. But Melissa couldn't bring herself to part with one of the baby donkeys. That's how Mabel came to live with us. She was more pet than livestock. The kids adored her. Melissa doted on her, and me, I tolerated it. Then 5 years ago, a car crash took Melissa and the kids from me. Ever since, it's just been me and Mabel. I reached out and placed my hand on her muzzle. You'd never hurt a soul, would you, girl? She let out a soft bray. Didn't think so. I exhaled, heavy. Had a rough one today, 18 dead, and this'll sound nuts, but I think maybe, just maybe, it was your kind. Donkeys. You believe that? Donkeys going rogue, attacking people in a bar? She snorted. Yeah, I don't know either, sweetheart. I just don't know. I went inside, stripped down, and stood under the water until it ran cold. When I came out, I had a voicemail from Williams waiting. Checked out the Walsh farm, Captain. Bit odd. Place was deserted. I was sure they had a crew working there, but it was quiet. Real quiet. Even the animals weren't making any noise. Kinda spooky, honestly. I did look in on the donkeys. They've got some, that much is true. But, I don't know how many they're supposed to have. So I can't say for sure if any are missing. And now that I think of it, they might have actually been miniature horses, not donkeys. Anyway, I left a note for the Walshes to call me back. Them, not the animals. Obviously. I'll check in again later. That bugged me. No one being home at the Walsh farm wasn't suspicious on its own. It was getting close to dusk. Maybe they were done for the day. Still, something didn't sit right. I was sitting at the kitchen table nursing a beer when my phone rang again. It was Williams, and he sounded shaken. Captain, oh God, you were right. There's a body. I stopped because it was lying right in the middle of the road and... Jesus. Slow down, I said, steady. Where are you? Near 756 Back Belmont Road, about a mile south of where it splits from Hinton. Okay, I said. I know the spot. Now tell me, what exactly did you see? Was it a human body? Yes, sir, Williams said, his voice trembling. I hit the brakes just in time, but it didn't matter. The guy was already gone, completely mangled, just like the bodies back at the bar. I pressed my fingers into my forehead. All right, call it in and... There's more, Captain, he cut in. There's an active situation. I was about to radio it when I heard screaming. I followed the sound. It was coming from one of the houses nearby. And you were right. I can't believe I'm saying this, but you were right. It's the donkeys. God help us. It's killer donkeys. William, slow down. You're losing me. Take a breath and tell me exactly what you saw. There were 2 kids out on the front lawn, and 5 of them, donkeys. They were attacking the kids, Captain, stomping them, biting, kicking. It was brutal. Jesus. Yeah, then their dad came out onto the porch with a shotgun. I was moving in to help, but I wasn't close enough yet. He raised the gun to fire. Then out of nowhere, a donkey charged him. It came flying out of the woods like it was waiting in ambush. I swear to God. Jesus. They got him on the porch, trampled him to death, and then, just like that, they bolted, took off back into the woods. I started heading to my car to radio for backup, but then I heard more screaming. Captain, they're moving from house to house, slaughtering everyone. Jesus. I finally got back to my car, but it's totaled, crushed like it went through a damn compactor. And I know it was them, the donkeys. I can hear them in the trees, breaking branches. I can hear the families, the screaming. God, what is this? I don't know, Williams, I said quietly. Did you manage to call it in? I can't. The car is unusable. I can't even get the door open. It's wrecked beyond anything I've ever seen. Please advise, sir. I'm scared. I pressed my palm harder into my forehead. Williams was about 40 minutes from my place by road and nearly an hour out from the station. That whole stretch around Pecan Ridge was a nightmare to navigate. But in a straight line, he was only a mile or so from my house. I'll be there in 10, I told him. Hang in there. Stay safe. I sprinted out to the stable and started saddling Mabel. We crested the ridge, Mabel and I, and looked down onto the road below. There it was, Williams' cruiser. Just as he said, smashed beyond recognition. As we drew closer, the sinking feeling in my stomach solidified into grim certainty. Williams was lying across the crumpled hood, twisted and still. We reached the scene, and Mabel started to fidget, bucking and snorting, clearly unsettled. Easy, girl, I murmured, running a hand along her neck. I dismounted and walked over. One look at Williams told me everything I needed to know. His neck was snapped, body limp, he was gone. I climbed back onto Mabel, and together we began checking house after house. At each stop, more bodies. The silence around us felt wrong, thick, oppressive, unnatural. Wherever the donkeys had gone, they weren't here anymore. "We've got to find them, girl," I said, patting her neck. "I don't know what the hell is going on, but we have to find them before anyone else dies." It's been hours now. We've been pushing through the woods nonstop, and the sun's starting to drop behind the trees. Cell signals cutting in and out. Mabel needed a break, and I figured I'd use the moment to get this written down. Just in case we don't make it out, someone needs to know what happened. The donkeys are leaving a trail. Not just broken branches, though there's plenty of that. They're also leaving corpses behind, small animals, squirrels, raccoons, even a few coyotes, torn apart like they didn't stand a chance. From the direction they're moving, I think they're heading toward Chesterfield, the next town over. God help them if they get that far. I still don't understand any of this. Donkeys aren't supposed to act like this. They don't kill people. They don't move like a tactical strike force. But these ones, something's different. Whatever the reason, it doesn't matter. They have to be stopped. And it's up to me and Mabel to do it. That's all for now. I can hear snapping branches up ahead. The sounds are closing in. They're coming. My handwriting was shaky, but I had to get the apology down on paper, just in case I didn't make it out alive. Lilith, my wife, leaned over my shoulder, whispering a stream of anxious questions. Around us, the others murmured nervously. "Lilith, damn it, just give me a minute," I snapped. The second the words left my mouth, I regretted them. This wasn't her fault. None of this was. Not the cramped, stifling cellar we were all hiding in. Not the panic in the air. If anything, I blame myself. "I just don't understand, Bobby," she whispered, voice trembling. I stopped writing and took her hands in mine, held them tight. She was crying, barely holding it together. "I don't know what went wrong, sweetheart. I'm trying to make sense of it. Just give me another minute, okay?" She nodded and backed off, finally seeing how rattled I was. We were all on edge. I glanced around the cellar, packed in tight. My two boys, Brady and Keith, sun-darkened and steady, stood by the cellar doors with their shotguns ready. Gunnar and Tim, two of my farmhands, whispered urgently between themselves. Natasha, Lilith's friend, was pale as a ghost, gripping her rosary like it might save her life. She looked like she might faint at any second. I nudged Lilith toward her and then turned back to the letter. I lowered my head into my hands, trying to focus, trying to remember when this all started to go sideways. The donkeys had been acting off for weeks. I chalked it up to some of the males getting moody. Nothing unusual. It happens. Still, I kept a close eye on them, and so did the rest of the team at Walsh Farm. We couldn't afford infighting among the animals, not with the coyote problem already this bad. But it wasn't just a bad mood. The donkeys had turned mean. They brayed around the clock, kicked at handlers, and even the most gentle foals lashed out without warning. I'd never seen anything like it in all my years working the land. The food hadn't changed. The space they had was the same. Nothing had been done differently, except for one thing. Gus. He came to us not long before the donkeys started getting weird. Said he'd grown up around donkeys and missed working with them. Seemed like a decent kid, polite, eager. We were growing fast, and I needed more help, so I brought him on. He did everything I asked. The donkeys seemed to take to him right away. After a while, I put him solely in charge of the youngest animals. He was good with them, reliable. I trusted him like I trusted any man working my land. Honestly, I think the donkeys just went completely insane. We tried everything to calm them down, kept them separated, followed every tip and trick the internet had to offer. We tried coaxing them with sweet feed and treats, hoping to ease whatever aggression had taken root. But nothing worked. Looking back, I wish they'd turned on each other more than they did. At least then, fewer people might have died. I found Jubilee in the barn a few days ago, mangled, barely recognizable. She was one of the sweetest ones, one of my favorites. I'd called Willow, the town vet, desperate to figure out what kind of animal could have done something like that. She didn't get back to me in time. I wish she had. I wish our last call hadn't cut out. Maybe if I'd brought her in sooner, things would have gone differently. Then came yesterday, the day everything fell apart. A day I carry some guilt for. A day I hope to live long enough to remember from a safe, distant future. Natasha showed up screaming, barreling down the driveway in her car like the devil was chasing her. She was hanging half out the window, yelling something we couldn't make out over the engine and gravel. The second she killed the engine, her voice rang clear. She had everyone's attention the moment she burst into the house. "The donkeys!" she shrieked. Lilith tried to calm her down as she stumbled through the foyer, while the boys and farmhands crowded around the door in confusion. We barely had time to react before the screaming started. It echoed from the woods, from neighboring farms. Human screams mixed with that unmistakable sound, braying, and hooves. Heavy hooves crashing through brush and branches. "What about the donkeys?" I asked Natasha, grabbing her by the shoulders. She was sobbing, frantic. "They're killing!" she cried. I shoved my way through the crowd at the door and looked out over the fields toward the area where the donkeys usually gathered. Nothing. Not a single one in sight. "What the hell?" I muttered. No sign of Gus either. Thinking back, I wonder now if he might have been the first one taken. Tanner pointed, his face pale. "There," he said, voice barely audible. We followed his gaze toward the tree line, just past the donkey enclosure, and that's when we saw them. A slow, shambling line of donkeys stepped into view. They were soaked in blood, their hides smeared with gore. Bits of bone, chunks of flesh clung to their matted coats. Some were missing ears or eyes, open wounds oozing and steaming in the late-day heat. And still they stared, silent for just a moment, before unleashing a chorus of loud, guttural brays that sounded like something out of a nightmare. "Get to the cellar!" I yelled. I didn't know what was happening, but it wasn't good, and I was going to keep my people safe for as long as I could. My boys rushed back into the farmhouse, grabbing their rifles while I herded the women and the farmhands down into the cellar. More donkeys kept emerging from the tree line, each one looking worse than the last. Their chorus of braying rose in volume until it drowned out everything else. It was deafening, horrific. As soon as Brady and Keith made it inside, I slammed the cellar doors shut and barricaded them. The boys took up positions by the entrance, the questions pouring out of them about killer donkeys. I didn't have answers. None of us did. Eventually, Natasha calmed down enough to speak. Her voice was barely audible over the noise outside. If I hadn't seen with my own eyes how strange the donkeys had been lately, I'm not sure I would have believed a word of it. "I was driving home," she began. Natasha lived just one farm over, had for years. I just pulled into the driveway when I saw them. Ernest and Gertie, they were stomping my dogs to death. Ernest and Gertie, two of my oldest donkeys. I had raised them myself. They'd grown into a strong, bonded pair, and their foals had always been the most gentle, the most well-behaved. Natasha's dogs, two German shepherds and a husky, were her babies. My chest ached for her. Just past them, I saw Amy and Sylvie's bodies. She swallowed hard. I only knew it was Sylvie because of those goddamn overalls. She didn't even have a he head. Her voice cracked. She broke down completely, collapsing into sobs. I couldn't begin to imagine the horror she had lived through, seeing her animals and her farmhands torn apart like that. I hesitated, then asked what I dreaded to know. "Rick?" She shook her head, her shoulders trembling. "I don't know," she sobbed. Lilith caught her in her arms, both women now crying. The cellar went quiet. We were all trying to process what we just heard, trying to make sense of something senseless. Outside, the screaming and braying hadn't stopped. It went on and on into the night. None of us slept. We spent the hours shifting between arguments, guesses about what caused all this, fear over who might still be alive, and long, stunned silences. Natasha rotated between near catatonic stillness and full-blown panic. Her rosary rarely left her hands. The braying finally tapered off at dawn. Faint beams of sunlight peeked in through the cracks in the cellar doors. I wanted to believe it was over, but I wouldn't risk opening those doors just yet. Then a voice rang out, making us all jump. I recognized it right away, Officer Williams. In a town this size, you knew every cop by name and voice. He knocked on the front door above us. "Bobby? Mrs. Walsh? Anyone in there? Are you okay?" His voice was shaky, rattled. Lilith started to move toward the sound, but I raised a hand to stop her. We didn't know what was out there. Cop or not, we couldn't be sure it was safe. "Bobby, something terrible's happened," Williams continued. "The captain sent me to ask some questions." I didn't have any answers to give him. We heard him retreat just as quickly as he'd come, his footsteps crunching down the gravel drive. Then, almost in sync, the braying began again. We heard Williams break into a run. Natasha sobbed harder as the donkeys drew near. She clutched her rosary tighter, eyes cast toward the ceiling, whispering desperate prayers. Lilith turned to me, eyes wide, desperate, pleading for some kind of guidance. Brady and Keith shifted nervously, their hands tightening around their guns. I prayed silently that they wouldn't need to use them. I'm a veterinarian, and something is really wrong with the donkeys in my town. It started off like any regular Tuesday. The usual calls came in: horse with a limp, a dog going into labor, nothing out of the ordinary. It wasn't until I got the call from Bobby that I realized the day was about to take a strange turn. "Hey, Dr. Brisky, it's Bobby. Think you could swing by the farm? I need to show you something. It's kind of important," he said, his voice tinged with unease. I told him I'd be there right away. The Walsh place is only a few miles from my clinic, no need to rush. I was pulling into his drive in no time. But the first thing I noticed, no donkeys. None. Not a single one out in the fields, and that was weird. Those fuzzy little devils are Bobby's pride and joy. He treats them better than most people treat their kids. Spoils them rotten. Waffles for breakfast, no joke. As I made my way up the driveway, I spotted Mrs. Walsh on the porch, pacing and biting her nails. I parked, grabbed my vet bag, and started toward her. But before I could say a word, Bobby's voice rang out from the barn. "Over here, Willow. I need you to see this." I pivoted and headed toward the big red barn. Bobby was waiting at the entrance, visibly tense, forehead furrowed deep. He held the door open for me. "What's going on, Bobby? You're acting like someone dead." I froze. There, lying in the straw just a few feet inside, was a donkey, ripped apart. The body was torn from shoulder to flank, deep gashes running the length of its torso. Its head was barely hanging on. Bobby stood beside it, staring down in a mix of disbelief and grief. "What do you think did this?" I asked softly. He looked at me like a man out of answers. Just shook his head. I crouched down beside the donkey, running my hand gently along what was left of her mane. Then I noticed the bite marks, big ones, about the size of, well, a donkey's. I blinked, then shook my head. That couldn't be right. Donkeys don't do this to each other. "I'm sorry for your loss, Bobby," I said. "Mind if I take her back to the clinic? Run some tests, see if I can figure out what or who did this?" He nodded, still looking like he was processing a bad dream. "Jubilee," he murmured. "What?" "Her name, Jubilee." I gave him a small nod. "Right, Jubilee." Together we loaded her into the tractor bucket to make transferring her easier. Once we had her in the bed of my truck, I climbed in and headed back to the clinic. As I pulled into the lot, I called out for my assistant. "Henry, come give me a hand with this." The second he saw what I was unloading, his face went pale. "What happened?" he stammered. "That's what we're going to figure out," I told him. "Can you grab the lift from inside? Let's get her inside before someone starts asking questions." Henry darted inside to grab the lift while I lowered the truck bed. It took a few attempts and a whole lot of grunting, but we finally managed to get Jubilee inside without too much viscera ending up on the sidewalk. Once she was up on my exam table, I got right to work. Henry stood off to the side, pale and stunned. Honestly, I really need to find a new assistant. Judging by the slight bloating and the body's temperature, I estimated the time of death to be around 1 a.m. I reached for my scalpel to begin the necropsy, and that's when Henry bolted for the exit. Yep, definitely need a new assistant. The first incision is always the easiest, just skin. It's what comes next that's a bit more work. As I worked my way down to the rib cage, I reached for the bone saw. Crack, a clean cut. As I opened her up, I was immediately struck by how normal everything looked. Internally, Jubilee was in great shape. Her organs were all healthy in texture and color, well nourished too. Her stomach was full, likely from a meal not long before her death. Sometimes when an animal gets sick or weak, the herd will turn on it to protect the rest from disease. But this wasn't that. Jubilee had been in perfect health. All right, let's see what you had for dinner, I muttered into the quiet. I gently sliced along the stomach lining and froze. My heart slammed against my ribs. What in the actual fuck? I staggered back from the table, hands shaking, the scalpel clattering to the floor. I took another cautious glance at the contents, just to be sure, then turned and rushed out of the room. "Henry!" I shouted. "Call the sheriff! Now!" To his credit, he didn't hesitate. Maybe I'd keep him around after all. I headed back out to the truck to grab my phone and immediately dialed Bobby. He picked up on the first ring. "Willow, that was quick. What did you find?" I ran a hand through my hair, trying to gather myself. "Bobby, have your other donkeys been acting strange lately? Anything out of the ordinary?" He hesitated. "Well, now that you mention it, they have been a little off. Aggressive almost. Real antsy when I feed them, nipping at each other. They ain't never been like that." "Sorry to hear that," I said quietly. "Have you brought on any new help recently? Anybody else notice this behavior?" "What's going on, Willow? You gonna tell me what you found or not?" Bobby asked, his voice firm. I exhaled sharply. "Bobby, can you tell me why there's a humor?" He gasped. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a beat before slipping it back into my pocket. Something was very, very wrong. Back inside, Henry gave me a confused look as I re-entered the building. I motioned silently for him to follow me back into the exam room. The moment we stepped into the exam room and Henry caught sight of Jubilee's open abdomen, he doubled over and vomited right onto the floor. Is that a hand, Dr. Brisky? A human hand?" he asked, voice trembling. I sighed and handed him a rag. "It sure is, bud. It sure is." I stared at the grotesque scene a moment longer, then muttered, "I don't know what the hell is going on. But if this donkey really ate a person, this quiet little mule town is about to get flipped on its head." Henry wiped his face and managed to pull himself together. We made our way back toward the front of the clinic. Just as we reached the reception area, there was a loud bang on the front door. I frowned. "It's open," I called out. The knocking didn't stop. It only got louder. "For fuck's sake," I muttered. Stepping around my desk, Henry sat frozen in place, not saying a word. I approached the door, ready to give someone a piece of my mind. But the second I saw what was on the other side, my blood ran cold. It wasn't the sheriff. I staggered back a step as the glass in the door cracked violently under pressure. "Henry, get to the back kennels. Now!" I shouted. Without hesitation, he bolted past me. I dove behind the desk, reached underneath, and grabbed my shotgun. By the time I turned back toward the door, 3 furious-looking donkeys stood on the other side, glaring straight at me down the barrel of my gun. "Fuck," I whispered. "There are killer donkeys on the loose, and it's my fault. I don't know the first thing about donkeys. Honestly, the only reason I ever took this disgusting job in the first place was to save my own ass. That's it. And now, in some cruel twist of fate, I'm in deeper shit than I would have been if I just stayed away. Right now, I'm bleeding out from my arm inside some farmhouse, hiding from a group of homicidal donkeys, and I've got no one to blame but myself. I've never been one to believe in karma, mostly because despite not being a great person, I never really had to deal with consequences. But whatever the hell is happening out there now, yeah, feels like karma, cosmic punishment, a debt coming due. So here I am, trapped in a house alone, surrounded by savage donkeys that I may have created. I'm still trying to process it all, but I'm pretty sure this mess traces back to me. Might as well start from the beginning, or a few weeks ago anyway. I took the job at the farm out of pure convenience. See, I had a situation, a body in the trunk of my car. I didn't know who the girl was, just someone I ran into in an alley. Now she was in pieces inside a garbage bag, and I needed to dispose of her fast. The original plan was simple: drive far out, dig a hole, bury her. But then I drove past the farm, and that's when the idea hit me. What if I fed the body to some animals? I figured I'd dump the remains into some feed and let nature do the dirty work. Problem was, the farmer, can't even remember his name now, caught me. I couldn't exactly tell him the truth, so I blurted the first thing that came to mind. I'm looking for a job. After a bit of quick improvising, claiming I grew up on a farm, spent my life around livestock, and that my name was Gus, which is half true, my name's Augustus, he bought it, hired me on the spot. And guess what? He assigned me to take care of the donkeys. Like I said, I knew nothing about donkeys, but animals in general will eat whatever you give them. So that first night, while everyone was asleep, I went out and fed them the girl. I could have left after that. Honestly, I should have, but it was just too easy. Why go back to driving out to remote spots, digging holes in the middle of nowhere, when I had a bunch of animals willing to take care of the evidence for me? So I stayed. It became routine. Kill someone, bring them back to the farm, wait for the others to go to bed, and then feed the donkeys. Neat, clean, efficient. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Walk away? Stop killing people? Not a chance. I think I ended up feeding the donkeys 6, maybe 7 bodies during the couple of weeks I was on the farm. It wasn't until about 2 weeks ago that I noticed something was off. They started acting strange, agitated. I could have sworn I saw a few of them getting into scuffles. But hey, I'm no donkey expert. What did I know? They all still liked me though, so I didn't think much of it. But it kept escalating. They got worse, louder, more restless. Eventually, I couldn't even sleep through the night because they wouldn't shut the hell up. My best guess? They developed a taste for human meat, and the regular feed just wasn't cutting it anymore. Other folks on the farm started noticing too. People were whispering that the donkeys were acting more aggressive. One day, they even came close to kicking one of the workers to the ground. It wasn't long before I found myself the only one still working directly with them. That suited me just fine. Less risk of someone catching on to what I was doing. But as with all good things, the streak didn't last. What had once been a twisted little side hobby quickly became a burden. The donkeys didn't just want human flesh anymore. They needed it. And the more I fed them, the more they demanded. That meant I had to kill more people to keep them satisfied. You see the problem, right? A never-ending cycle. It stopped being fun. I couldn't keep up. Eventually, the donkeys turned on me too. It happened when I brought them my latest victim. As I was opening the gate, one of them charged straight at me, teeth bared, eyes wild. I barely had time to react before it latched onto my arm. I fought back, kicked, punched, did everything I could while it clamped down with the strength of a vice. I was sure it was going to shatter every bone in my arm. But just for a second, it loosened its grip, and that was all I needed to get away. I took off, blood pouring down my sleeve, cradling my arm to my chest. I sprinted toward a neighboring farmhouse, but the braying got louder, overwhelming. That's when I realized they were multiplying. They were coming from every direction, from the woods, from behind buildings, from nowhere it seemed, just appearing out of the dirt like something out of a nightmare. And I ran, bleeding, desperate, chased by the monsters I had made. I glanced back a few times as I ran and saw a few of the donkeys stop to sniff at the trail of blood I was leaving behind. When I reached the house, I slammed the door shut and locked it, dragging a couch over to brace it. I didn't know if that would be enough to stop a group of bloodthirsty donkeys, but at the very least, it might buy me a few minutes. I'm not staying in this house. No chance. I'm getting out of this town. Just as soon as I stitch up my arm. The bleeding's mostly under control for now, but I know I'm on borrowed time. My next obstacle is getting out of here and into something that can move. I found a backpack in the hallway closet and stuffed it with whatever food I could scrounge from the kitchen. While digging through the bathroom for some painkillers or antibiotics, anything to keep infection at bay, I came across a set of car keys. I moved over to the window, pressed a button on the remote, and watched the lights on a truck flash in the driveway. Perfect. All I had to do now was get to the truck. I scanned the yard from every window I could, trying to plot my course. A few donkeys were still out there, some ripping into each other, others tearing at what was left of the farm animals. But the stretch of space between the kitchen door and the truck was clear. If I moved fast, I might make it before they even noticed me. I shouldered the backpack and unlocked the truck with the remote from inside. No time for fumbling with keys once I was out there. I opened the kitchen door slowly and stepped outside, holding my breath. None of the donkeys turned. Not yet. I took one last deep breath and ran. Almost instantly, their braying shot up, wild and frenzied. I didn't look back. I sprinted for the truck, threw open the door, dove in, and slammed it shut just as one of the donkeys rammed its head into it. I hit the lock button and sat there, heart pounding, trying to catch my breath. The noise outside kept building, snorting, hoofbeats, angry brays slamming against the windows like waves. I dropped the backpack on the passenger seat, shoved the key into the ignition, and turned it. Nothing. I tried again, still nothing. No, 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 no! I shouted, jamming the key in over and over. The engine stayed dead. It wasn't going to start. No matter how many times I turned the key or pounded the dashboard, the truck refused to give even a cough. I leaned forward and slammed my head into the steering wheel again and again, overwhelmed with frustration. Now I'm stuck in a truck that won't move, surrounded on all sides by donkeys. More of them keep appearing, crawling in from every direction like they're being summoned. They're everywhere, and I've got nowhere to go. I'm screwed. I fell in love with a beautiful ass, but I just ended up getting donkey punched. Her ass wasn't the first thing I noticed, and that should tell you everything you need to know about Lena. She was striking, sure, but not in the obvious way. There was something magnetic about her, and I was so immediately captivated that it took me a full 30 seconds of conversation before I even thought to glance at her backside, which, for the record, did not disappoint. But any woman who can walk around with that kind of swagger and still come off enchanting has to have the kind of charm that could make a monk rethink his vows. I mean, it could coax a raging bull to nap in her lap, or have the angriest donkey eating oats from her palm faster than Gus could rub one out behind the watering trough. Lena and Gus were the two newest hires at the Walsh farm. Lena? Spellbinding. Gus? Absolute garbage. Being the only mechanic in Septic Creek, Missouri, means I get around to all the farms pretty regularly. I've been over to the Walsh place 5 times in the past few weeks, and every time I saw Lena, I told myself I was going to talk to her. Last time I actually did. She was feeding a carrot to Agamemnon, the meanest, most temperamental donkey of the bunch. Somehow she had him melting under her touch, scratching him gently behind the ear. She wore this red neckerchief that was so damn cute. I genuinely worried I'd get hit with a surprise boner right there in the field. I stopped a few feet away, smiled, then worried the smile made me look like a creep, so I dropped it. "Why so serious?" she asked, teasing. I tried to bring the smile back. It felt off. "I just came over to say something, Miss Lena." My foot slipped slightly. I looked down. I just stepped in donkey shit. The silence that followed was almost physically painful. 10 full seconds of me scrambling mentally for something, anything to say. "Okay, bye." I turned and speed walked away, my right shoe sliding with every other step. So when the donkey apocalypse hit, I actually thought, briefly, that it might work in my favor. My place is tucked far enough into the woods that I figured the donkeys wouldn't find me. No one else was that lucky, but I hadn't seen one near my house, until I did. I came home from work one evening to find a single donkey standing motionless in my yard. Looked like he'd gotten separated from the rest of his herd, or tribe, or gang, or whatever you call a group of murder-happy asses. He had a rabbit clamped in his jaws. The poor thing was still twitching, its guts dragging behind it like bloody ribbons. But that wasn't the weirdest part. The donkey was staring straight at me, and his eyes were yellow. Not pale, not dirty brown, bright, unholy yellow. I didn't know, and honestly didn't care, why that donkey's eyes were yellow, or why it felt the need to bite down on a still-living rabbit like it enjoyed the sensation of death. What I did know was that I needed to get the hell out of Dodge. I bolted for my car and slammed the door shut behind me. The donkey's furious braying echoed behind me, and I knew that sound would bring the rest of his deranged buddies straight to my doorstep. So I floored it, swerving onto 19th Street. My plan was simple: take a right onto rural Route 13, hit the highway, and disappear. There wasn't anything in my house worth dying for, except maybe my pet tarantula, but even he wasn't worth this mess. That's when it hit me. The rabbit killer was Agamemnon from the Walsh farm. Against all logic and survival instinct, I made a hard left instead of right. That road led straight back to the farm. I ditched the truck behind a hay bale, grabbed the baseball bat from behind my seat, and crept forward toward the last place I'd seen Lena. Every nerve in my body screamed at me that this was a monumentally stupid idea. My own brain screamed the words, "You are a fucking stupid fucking idiot." And then everything froze. Up ahead, there was a figure on the ground. She wore a red neckerchief. I broke into a sprint, no longer trying to be stealthy. The only thing that mattered was getting to her, praying she was still alive, praying I wasn't too late. The closer I got, the worse it looked. She wasn't moving. My breath hitched with every step. That's when something hit me from behind, hard. Pain exploded through my ribs. I heard the crack, felt it. I couldn't even brace as I hit the ground, rolling forward until I landed face to face with Lena, or what was left of her. Her head was still beautiful in a tragic, lifeless way, but her skin had already started to fade to a cold, ashen gray. Her golden hair, soaked through with blood, clung to her cheeks. Her neck had been torn open, her esophagus dangling like wet rope, and the rest of her body, just a twisted heap of limbs and gore, lay several feet away. I puked, hard. Then I saw red. I got to my feet, ignoring the pain searing through my side. I lifted the bat high over my head, my hands shaking with rage. I spun around, scanning for the donkey responsible. Any of them would do. There were plenty to choose from. A ring of at least a dozen stood around me, all baring their teeth, all with those haunting yellow eyes. I realized then and there, I was about to go down in a blaze of glory. That's when I pissed myself. And yeah, I cried a little. Then something strange happened. Every single donkey turned to face the farmhouse, and they took off. Just like that. I stood there, stunned, watching them gallop away. Part of me knew I should be running in the opposite direction, getting as far away from this madness as possible. But I didn't move. I couldn't. Instead of running, I knelt beside Lena's ruined body and gently took the red neckerchief from her mangled head. It smelled like copper and coconut. I wiped a streak of blood from her cheek, then laid the cloth over her face. Leaving her exposed like that to a world cruel enough to destroy someone so beautiful just felt wrong. Clutching the bat, ignoring the fire in my ribs, I rose and started after the donkeys. I stopped when I got about 50 yards away. They'd gathered around a truck, forming a tight, pulsing ring of snarling flesh and braying madness. One after another, they took turns charging the vehicle. And then I saw it. Someone was trapped inside. My stomach dropped. That was also the first moment I realized just how many donkeys there were. Not dozens, hundreds. Easily over 200. That was way more than Walsh Farm ever had. Were they coming in from neighboring counties, breeding at light speed, turning humans into donkey hybrids? Crawling up from hell itself? None of it made sense. But then again, nothing about any of this had. I was trying to think, frantically, how I could possibly help the poor soul in that truck when the windshield finally gave out. With a final thunderous crash, it shattered inward under the force of one last donkey charge. 3 of them shoved their heads into the cab, teeth flashing, and then came the scream. Raw, unfiltered horror. The man was dragged out shoulder first, kicking and shrieking as they tore at him. I recognized the face beneath the blood and terror. Gus. His pants snagged on the broken glass as they pulled him through, ripping off completely as he hit the dirt. Screaming like a dying child, Gus flailed in the dust. And then one of the bigger donkeys, the one with the most hate in its eyes, bit down and tore off his dick like it was a baby carrot. Swallowed it whole. You ever have one of those moments where your brain just says, "That's enough. I didn't need to see that"? Now multiply that by a donkey just ate that guy's dick. But silver lining, Gus's shrieking demise gave me the perfect distraction. I ran. I sprinted like my life depended on it, because it absolutely did. Step, 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 slip, 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 step, slip. Running through a field of donkey crap is way harder than you'd expect, but I was almost in the clear. Almost. Something slammed me from the side, knocking me into a bush and straight onto the hard ground. My broken rib exploded in a hot flash of agony. I gasped, the air gone from my lungs, barely able to move. Then I saw them, yellow eyes, foaming jaws, teeth bared in pure hatred. This was it. I was going to die. And all I could think about, my final profound thought, was that my body would become a chunky, anonymous pile in a field full of donkey shit. Then, boom, a shotgun blast shredded the creature's skull in a spray of red mist. Ears ringing, pants wet, brain barely functioning. I turned toward the shooter. A mustached man sat astride a donkey. His donkey's eyes were normal. "Easy, girl, easy, Mabel," he murmured, calming her. I knew that face, even through the haze. "Captain Smeg," I yelled, or tried to. All I could hear was the high-pitched ring in my ears. He reached down. I grabbed his hand and stumbled to my feet, dazed. Sounds began to trickle back. "Get donkeys, Chesterfield dynamite," he shouted while reloading the shotgun with practiced speed. And that's when the herd turned on us. I collapsed again, this time convinced I wasn't getting back up. But the thunder of shotgun blasts still echoed through the chaos, relentless and glorious. I blinked my eyes open slowly, certain I had sunk a few inches into the mud beneath me. Only, it wasn't mud. It was a steaming 4-inch deep pool of donkey gut soup. I added my own contribution to the mix, retching violently. When I finally lifted my head, I saw Captain Smeg, grievously wounded. He was hunched over, blood spilling through his fingers as he tried in vain to hold his abdomen together. His eyes flickered, dulling in and out of focus. "Run," he gasped. It hit me then. My hearing was back. Watching him try to clutch the shredded mess of his stomach was almost too much, but then he nodded toward a tree a few yards away. "Mabel, she helped me stash the dynamite. It's behind that tree." Honestly, I thought that was going to be the end of him right there. But somehow, impossibly, Captain Smeg stood up, staggered over to the tree, and pulled a small bundle of dynamite from behind it. He glanced toward the feeding frenzy. Every donkey for miles seemed to be gnawing on what was left of Gus. "Only a few came after us," he muttered. "The rest, they're all on the body, hundreds of them." He was right. The entire herd was converged in a grotesque circle, jostling and lunging for a chunk of Gus's remains. That must have been the captain's plan all along. Wait until they all gathered in one spot, and then end it. Cradling the dynamite gently in one arm, he climbed back onto his donkey, Mabel, the only creature in this whole God-forsaken mess that still seemed immune to the madness. He leaned down, pressing his face to hers. "You carried me when my family died, Mabel, and I need you to carry me now. I'm not strong enough on my own, but no one ever really is. Can you walk with me one last time?" Of course, she didn't understand the words, but animals don't need to understand to trust. She nuzzled him, and without hesitation, began walking straight toward the center of the horror. Captain Smeg turned his head one last time, locked eyes with me, and whispered, "Run, run." I obeyed. I made it to a grove of trees, lungs burning, heart pounding, and from the edge of the woods, I looked back, just in time to see Mabel and the captain disappear into the mass. Then came the explosion. The sky lit up, and when the dust finally settled, all was still. My car still ran, and I didn't stop driving until I reached my house. I didn't care about anything except a scalding shower and the kind of sleep that turns off your brain. I don't even remember falling asleep. But I do remember waking up on the living room floor, completely disoriented. Something was off. The bite on my arm, I'd told myself it was nothing, that it wasn't like a zombie movie, that infection or madness couldn't spread through bites. Funny what we convince ourselves of when survival depends on believing the lie. But I can't lie to myself anymore. It's obvious now. The donkey apocalypse wasn't random. It spread through flesh, through eating and being eaten, and apparently it can affect an entire species, which is why when I woke up and realized I'd eaten half of my pet tarantula, I felt true terror.